Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we are looking at the AccountsAdvanced ePack ep4.06.03 and the updates included in that release. If we jump to the next slide, my name's Tom Jeffrey. I'm one of the education and media technicians at Caseware UK, and you can see there that our subject matter expert today and presenter for the content is Ashley Goldsmith, our product manager for accounts production. The next slide, we've got some housekeeping. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these points by now, but we'll just run through them briefly. So we do have a Q&A option on the control panel there, so you can use the Q&A option there to submit any questions that you have, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Keep an eye out in the chat as well. I'm going to be sharing a couple of PDFs today, so we have got some release notes and also an article with some useful links. I'll talk a bit more about those a bit later on, but I'll be putting those in the chat for you to download. We're also recording the session. The recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and to the knowledge base. Also on the knowledge base, we'll add those files, those documents that I was talking about, and any questions will be included in a Q&A document, and we'll upload that to the knowledge base as well. So that's the housekeeping out the way. I'll hand over to Ash and we'll get started.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Just get my video starting. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome along to the update webinar for the recently released ep4.06.03, applicable obviously to the AccountsAdvanced and to the AccountsAdvanced IFRS templates. And over the next half an hour or so, just want to guide you through what the main changes were in the ePack, what you need to look out for, and also one or two other things that you might have missed potentially, but maybe not if you've read the release notes cover to cover, which I say Tom will be attaching into the chat as we work our way through the session. So the key updates really fall into three different areas for this particular ePack. First and foremost, we have a new version of the LLP SORP, which has been released, and therefore we needed to put some changes through to react to the changes required there. So several changes in relation to the LLP SORP, which I'll go through shortly. We also have several changes to our default Irish audit report wording. So that relates both to the AccountsAdvanced and to the AccountsAdvanced IFRS templates. And basically that's in response to some of the requirements changing for the audit reports for Irish companies there. So I'll guide you through those changes as well. Finally, on the IFRS template, there is what we call a TPAC, a template pack update to accompany this ePack release. There's actually a new mapping code that's been included in the mapping. We've also updated the properties of some of the existing mappings. So I'll guide you through what that new mapping number is, and also we'll mention how you can go about getting those updates included in new and also existing files. And it's certainly going to benefit you going forward as you produce your IFRS accounts. Okay. And moving on to the next slide, we've got the 2022 taxonomy. Now, as most of you will be aware, for XBRL purposes, a new taxonomy is released periodically. It seems to be pretty much every year at the moment. And for those of you that attended the recent user groups, you might have heard me mentioning that this was planned to be going out in this ePack, ep4.06.03. Unfortunately, we found towards the latter end of our testing phase that Revenue Ireland, for one, and HMRC for two, are not yet ready to accept these new taxonomies. So the latest we have from Revenue Ireland is that they're currently testing, or they were testing, the new taxonomy at the end of May. And it will be available in early June. Obviously, we are in early June now, but I'm yet to hear anything to say that they've started to accept the 2022 taxonomy. So hence, we haven't put the changes through as yet. Equally, HMRC's response is that the taxonomy will be available soon. Now, that is clearly very vague. I would hope that that means it's going to be available within the next month or so. but no promises on that. Companies House are up and running, that they've been accepting this new taxonomy for a while now, but clearly because those two blockers are in the way, we've pulled the 2022 taxonomy changes from this ePack, and we will include them obviously in the next update, ep4.06.03, which is due out later in the summer. Doesn't present you with any filing problems. You can go ahead and continue to use the previous versions, 2020 or 2021. It just means that there will be some new tags which have been added to the 2022 version, which you simply won't be able to tag in your set of accounts as yet. So the definition file hasn't been updated to the new version as yet, but that will be remedied hopefully in the next ePack, presuming obviously that these two bodies are ready to accept that new version. Okay, on to the actual content we have changed then, and starting with the LLP updates. So this is the 7th edition of the SORP that's been released, and the changes are effective for periods commencing 1st of January 2022. So clearly there won't be too many live sets of accounts where this is mandatory as yet, but early adoption is permissible of these changes, and therefore we've got that early adoption option now within the wizard, should you wish to adopt these changes. Now, one thing I would say on the early adoption is that you are adopting all of the changes. You can't kind of adopt just some of the changes of the updates. It's kind of all or nothing, as tends to be the case with these regulatory updates. So once you tick the box in the wizard to say, yes, I want to accept these new changes, then all of the changes will take effect on your file. So I've broken down the changes into what I've called new content versus amended or changed content from what we had previously. So the first new content, as I've already mentioned there, is that the Start wizard now has an extra option to allow you to early adopt the new changes made by the SORP. Okay, so front and center, right at the start of the Start wizard, you have the option there to choose to early adopt or not these changes. We also have a brand new accounting policy for LLPs, division and distribution of profits, which is available and can be switched on via the accounts prep table in the normal manner. And again, I will talk you through how that looks in a second in a set of accounts. As for the updated LLP content, the primary statements, the cash flow statement, we've allowed drawings now to be treated as either operating or financing cash flows. So previously it was just always in financing, but again, per the SORP, it can be treated as either. So we've made some amendments there to the cash flow worksheet and also the Excel cash flow documents, which some of you I know use for your cash flows. So I'll talk a bit more about that shortly. There are also a few notes to the financial statements which have changed. The reconciliation of members' interest, or ROMI, literally just a description change there. So drawings per the SORP is to be renamed drawings on account and distribution of profit. So all that will really mean is that that will be probably wrapping onto a second row potentially, depending on the size of your reconciliation of members' interest table. The loans and other debts due to members notes, we had some feedback that obviously most of the figures in that note would be negative per your trial balance. We've flipped those figures now to show as positive as you would expect, perhaps in a kind of a creditor style note. So we've made that change. And the analysis of net debt, again, strictly by the letter of the new LLP SORP, we've got some additional row headers and emboldening of row descriptions on that particular note. So again, I'll just show you what the changes are there. Okay, so firstly, just to show you the Start wizards, and just using a screenshot here just to save us a little bit of time flicking back and forth from the wizard. We have this option here towards the middle of my screen, which is obviously going to be applicable if you're an LLP and if your period start date is prior to the 1st of January 2022. Clearly, if it's after that date, which I don't think anyone will have yet, but if it is after that date, then these changes will be mandatory. So that's how you can switch it on, just a simple yes or no on the drop down there. So if I just quickly open up a LLP file, and I've got a few of these new changes just to talk through. So beginning with the division and distribution of profits accounting policy, you can see we've added in 6 different text paragraphs by default. In my file, given the circumstances we have here, 4 of them are active and 2 are disabled, but I can switch on those additional text areas if I want to, just by ticking the tick boxes, or again, I can disable them by deselecting. Obviously, with the green input text here, all of this text is fully editable, so I can quite happily go ahead and type in any further text that I want to in there. And the accounts prep table is where you need to go if you decide that you don't want this accounting policy to appear. Okay, so that's the division and distribution of profits, an additional accounting policy brought about in this ePack. If I move on to the cash flow statement, just using my issues pane here to jump quickly between the different sections in this file. This row here within the cash flow statement is the new row effectively, and that obviously appears within the operating section of the cash flow towards the top here. So previously we only had the option to show this within financing, so our amounts down here. But now if you do choose to show this within the operating section, you'd need to populate this row via the cash flow worksheet, which hopefully most of you are familiar with. And it's this cell here, which is brand new within our cash flow working sheet. So were to change that value imaginatively to 444 and then go back to the fin stats, then after a few seconds, once it's recalculated, you'll see that number pulling through. Let me just jump back down to that cell. There we go. So that's how you would pull through if you're using our standard inbuilt cash flow workings document. Alternatively, as I mentioned at the start, you might wish to use the Excel cash flow link document, which you can certainly find on our knowledge base, if that's not going to be attached on the collateral on this particular webinar. And there is a new version of that cash flow link document, which would include a cell to pull automatically into that particular document within the cash flow, this cell here. So automatically, if you use that new Excel document, that will pull through into the correct place. So you might just need to download the newer version of that Excel version of the cash flow working sheet. Okay, moving on then to the reconciliation of members' interests, and this is a pretty bland change, really. It's literally just the wording has been updated from drawings to drawings on account and distribution of profit as per the SORP. And so there's 2 rows within the reconciliation members' interest where that description's changed. So that's purely all that change amounts to there, just a description, text description change. Moving on, our loans and other debts due to members. As I mentioned earlier, previously this note was showing basically the negative values as they pull through from the trial balance, but clearly we would want this to show as positive, even though the figures would be negative. So hence we've flipped the values effectively of these amounts as they present on screen in response to client feedback there. Finally, the analysis of net debt. The header that I've got circled there, the net debt before members' debt and the total net debt, those headers are both showing in bold now. And previously, the final row didn't actually have a descriptor to the left-hand side. But again, per the SORP, that is to go in as net debt. So hence we've added that in for that particular note now as well. Okay, so that's all of the LLP changes. If I just go back to my slides and move along to the Irish audit report changes. that we've made within this ePack. And just to clarify, this applies to both the AccountsAdvanced and the IFRS template as well. So there have been several ISAs which have been revised in the ethical standards for auditors by the IAASA, and the changes are a combination of those that we've put through. So again, splitting it out into new content versus amended content. The main audit report, you'll see we have a new emphasis of matter section, which enables you to put in some of your own input text, should you need an emphasis of matter within the audit report. We've also incorporated the key audit matters section in response to client feedback. Now, key audit matters is already there within the UK and the offshore audit reports, but again, due to client feedback, we've decided to add that particular section into the standard audit report as well. It is entirely optional, but you can switch that on, and then there's further editing options available in there should you need key audit matters to be included. There's also a new section relating to the auditor's responsibilities for the audit of the financial statements, relating to irregularities and inherent limitations. That will only actually apply for periods commencing 15th of July onwards. Just watch out for that one. If your period commencing date is before that, then that section isn't required. As for the updated content, the abridged audit report will now always refer to the directors within the header that's attached to the abridged version of the audit report. And on the main audit report, again, we've got several tweaks that have been made to various different sections. So the opinion section, we've added in some new wording and a new reference to section 3363A of the Companies Act. Conclusions relating to going concern, we've updated the wording there. The opinion on other matters prescribed by the Companies Act has been updated, as has the responsibilities of directors and the other matters section as well. So quite a substantial change to the audit report content, but obviously we've had various feedback from Irish clients over the last few months, and I'm well aware that several clients are using custom audit reports rather than our standard one, but hopefully this will make it much more likely that you can just use our standard audit report going forwards. So I'd just like to highlight a couple of those changes for the new content. So again, if I just quickly jump into a file, and I'll begin by looking at the emphasis of matter. And it's this section here, so this tick box within the opinion section right at the top of the audit report is brand new. So you can have an emphasis of matter. If you tick the tick box, then you get obviously your header and a text input area for you to type in whatever that might relate to. The key audit matters section is slightly chunkier. There's more options available within here. So by default, nothing will show, but if you do wish to show key audit matters, then tick the box. And if you want to include an emphasis matter paragraph before that key audit matters section, then again, you can tick the tick box to show that as well, and that will populate this particular paragraph here. There are some further options within the key audit matters section. By clicking the question mark here, you can choose how many of these key audit matters you want to include, from 1 up to a maximum of 10. So perhaps if I take that down to 3, for example, and you'll see this table will update, and we'll only have the 3 rows showing for you to type in your key audit matters and how you've addressed those particular matters within your audit. Okay, so those are the main changes in the Irish audit report. Going back to my slides again, I mentioned about the new IFRS mapping. So let's look at that in a little bit more detail. And this time what I've done is I've actually shared one of our specifications with you in order to illustrate where this new mapping code actually takes effect in the accounts, because it wouldn't be particularly obvious on the face of a set of accounts. So the new map code here is B01070006, and it relates to deferred tax charged directly to equity. Now, that will only take effect within this tax note, within this section of the tax note, I should say, in this calculation here. Okay, so this is the check digit amount, if you like. It's the total that's added by the F01 code, the B01, the new code, and the CO209 code here. So if you have something mapped to that amount, it will go into our total, and then obviously an other unallocated difference will appear here unless you manually type into these input fields a value which correlates to that total. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. That's the change that's been made, and that will be included within that particular check digit total within the tax notes for IFRS entities. There are also a couple of further tweaks that we've made to the mapping. It's not purely just the one code that we've added. We've changed some properties of existing map codes. We've also updated the descriptions and the text, which will appear in the accounts as a result of some of the other map codes. So it's definitely worth taking that update. So download the ePack automatically on newly created files. You'll get the new mapping. Obviously, if you've got a file which already exists, then you'll need to go through the process of copying in the mapping to that existing file. And there are articles available on our knowledge base to talk you through how to do that. Okay, just one final slide from me. So I'm slightly ahead of time, perhaps. The other update to mention on AccountsAdvanced IFRS templates relates to functionality for the financial instruments note, particularly relating to the IFRS. So in response to client feedback, obviously those of you who are unfortunate enough to have a financial instruments note in your sets of accounts will know that it can run on for pages and pages. And previously it was quite tricky to switch off an individual part. Obviously, our templated note tries to cover all bases, but it's unlikely you're going to need every single section of that to be populated within one particular set of accounts. So what we've actually done is followed the lead of the director's report, if you like, for those of you familiar with the accounts prep table, and we've added in the subsections for financial instruments, and you can go into the accounts prep table and individually switch any of those sections on or off in accordance with obviously what your requirements are for that particular engagement. Okay, so hopefully that's fairly clear, and hopefully it will make it slightly easier to switch on or off sections which aren't required within that note. So that's the place to go. There aren't any options on the face of the accounts. So if you do want, say, market risk to be switched off, then come back to the accounts prep table, select no here, and then that particular part of that lengthy note will be switched off. So hopefully that's clear, and hopefully that will save a lot of our clients a lot of pain when you're working on that particular note of your accounts. Okay, I think that is me. So I will hand over to Tom then now, just to wrap up and see if there's any questions, etc. Thanks.
Thanks, Ash. Yes, as Ash said, you've got still got the opportunity to submit any questions that you have. So you've got the Q&A option there on the control panel. Just revisiting a section that we saw during the presentation to do with the cash flow Excel document. It's not included on the PDF that that I put in the chat for you, but we do have a couple of articles on the knowledge base, including how to download that document and also how to use it. If you'd like any more guidance, or if you'd like us to point you in the right direction, please let us know. And the latest version of that document will be available on the knowledge base. In terms of what we've added into the chat, we have got a handout which is including some useful links, and that is really about best practices and about downloading ePacks, applying ePacks to your engagement files, also how you apply TPAC updates. Of course, we know that many of our users are apprehensive, a bit nervous about taking updates when you've been applying customizations and when you've been working away at your files. Essentially, our key message is to take functionality updates, so that will keep key areas of the software running correctly. For example, the wizard, the toolbar, how mandatory tags are applied, things like that. So it's very important that you keep up with the functionality updates. And then, of course, any content updates will your decision to take those will be based on what customizations you have. Also, not forgetting that if you've added in your own notes, or if you've perhaps turned off some default text and added in your own text section, things like that will not be affected by updates. You also have the lock updates option in the accounts preparation table. So next to where Ash was showing you your ability to turn sections on and off, you have your lock option there, and that allows you to lock a section to prevent it from being updated when you're trying to preserve your custom content. So these are the sorts of things that we go through in the guidance that's in the document there. If you need any guidance that isn't there, or any clarification on anything that is, then of course let us know. But you can download that. You can also download an additional PDF there, which is the release notes, just a summary of the changes included in this release. So if we jump to the next slide, we can see just a brief summary of the upcoming sessions that we have in our schedule. We're adding sessions to the schedule all the time, but as you've done for today, if you go to caseware.co.uk/events, then you can see the agendas and register to attend. We've got a couple of IXBRL sessions to round off of our 3-part IXBRL series, and we're also going to be looking at cloud audit template customizations. I know that there's some of you on the session today that are very close to the cloud audit template. So certainly we've got 2 sessions there that I think you'll be interested in to get the most out of your engagements in the cloud. And on the next slide, we've just got a reminder of our 2 social media platforms. So we have our LinkedIn page, which is for our client services Caseware UK content. And that's where we will let you know of upcoming sessions, any other news within the business. The recordings of our sessions are uploaded, as I said earlier, to our YouTube channel, and we've got a webinar playlist there. We've also got lots of other playlists for quick vids and bite-sized video content. And if I remember rightly from our rehearsal, the next slide is the knowledge base, kb.caseware.co.uk. That's where you've got all of your guidance, articles, video content, that sort of thing. And also for your super users and or IT contacts at your firm, you've got the download area, which is where you'll find the ePack and TPack download. And also, as I mentioned earlier, you've got the download option for the Cashflow Excel link. So that brings us to the end of the session. I think that covers everything. So thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the webinar, and we'll see you on the next session. Thanks very much.